Welcome to another Azure Centric Podcast on our Azure Weekly Updates. Yes, we did promise before that we were keep going with our podcasts, but with COVID, with Christmas, and with all the madness with this new variant, it was not. We cannot we could not keep the promise. But
It's
now
true.
we
Life is
now
complicated.
yes, now that COVID arrived at my house, now that I am in quarantine and you, Andrew, are not, right?
I
Um,
am the opposite of
that is
quarantine
the
this week. Yeah,
quarantine,
yeah.
exactly. We are keeping this, and we will do this every single week, like we anticipated to do it. So my name is Marcus Nogueira. I'm your host for the Azure Centric, and with me I have my partner in crime, Andrew. So Andrew, new background.
Yeah, that's actually it's not live, but it is real on location here in beautiful Mexico. So I'm very lucky I was able to sneak out of Canada before all of the craziness started to happen, and I've been down south enjoying a little bit of a break. It's been a very difficult and busy 2021 for everybody. But to be honest, my family deserved a little bit of a break because they put up with me working. So
Yes,
that's what
absolutely.
we're doing. We're
No,
we're doing a little family fun here. So
I
it's
could
good
not
fun.
agree more, and you really deserve it. It's been a heck of a year of 2021. We accomplished so much
Mhm.
professionally, personally, and even with our podcast that is unbelievable.
It's been amazing. We've had some really awesome,
Yes,
I don't know what to say, feedback and results. Um, I love seeing those numbers. I love hearing all of the feedback, positive, negative. Tell us about your grocery list, whatever. It's
exactly.
really nice to hear kind of a two-way communication, right?
Yeah,
And it's what keeps us going. It keeps us coming back, and we love doing this. We talk about this stuff anyways, so
absolutely.
it's kind of fun to record. It's kind of fun to have kind of some community feedback, and we do this for you, our listeners, our viewers, because first of all, we love you, but also because we want to tell you about all of the Azure weekly updates.
Yes, and one of the reasons that we didn't record, I remember one of the episode. It was I think the last of the year. It's
Mhm.
because we didn't have for the first time during 52 weeks. We didn't have
There
an
was
update from Azure.
zero update.
and then and
I
then we,
never
we
saw that
even
one.
we even get together and say what we going to talk about it, right? Because we don't have updates, and this podcast is basically our weekly conversation, like very informal, as you already know, right? That is talking
If they
about
don't,
Azure, but if they don't give us what to talk about,
yeah, there was and to be honest, I thought it was kind of a good thing because it means that the product teams and all of the very
yes,
hardworking people with the Azure services and products, they had a week or two off around the holidays
absolutely,
as well, and it's so important, right? We have to maybe that's what we should have talked about, but
exactly,
it is important to kind of take a bit of a pause, have a break, and refresh because it's really good for your mind, mental health, and your physical health as well, right?
absolutely, and it's like, but don't worry if you listen to the podcast. Don't worry because Azure didn't take a break. It was only just a development team. Okay,
Just on hold for 2 weeks,
exactly.
completely. Just
They just went to spend holidays with the family and all of that.
pull the plug.
Exactly.
Reminds me of the old story where the server cabinet is in the closet in the office, and every night we would lose power about 9 o'clock at night, and everybody comes running and all of that, right? And it always turns out it's the cleaning crew that comes in, plugs unplugs the server rack, plugs in the vacuum cleaner, and then plugs it back in when they're done. That's
Absolutely.
that's just Azure for a couple of weeks. No big
Exactly.
deal,
No,
right?
no worries.
That's
No worries about that. So we want, like you said, to thank you. in this case for all of your subscribers. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe. It's the only thing we are asking for is your support. Smash that like button, even if you don't like us, or if you think that Andrew should be in Canada with minus 30 Celsius like I did a couple of weeks ago instead of plus 20. Just give it a thumbs down. That's okay. We will address that no matter what, right? But
We'll be home in no time. It's fine.
absolutely. But this week, I have to say that it was the probably the easiest week of
Oh, yeah.
getting the agenda for this podcast. So we basically
was.
didn't cut almost nothing, right? We didn't take
Yeah,
anything
just
else.
I think just one or something like that,
Yeah.
right? And there was some really cool updates in here, and I remember on Monday seeing one that came out that I was very excited about, and it got my brain kind of thinking about certain things and infrastructure as code, things as code. And it did actually lead me down a little bit of a reading and studying path, by the way. So,
But you studying while vacations?
so vacation for me means that my mind is freed up because I don't have to be dedicated to our clients, for example, right? So I just have more cycles, and I'm not 25, and I can't just sit by a pool and drink what we call cervezas all day. So I
Okay.
can, but my wife becomes rather unhappy with me by the evening. So in an effort to keep the family happy
Exactly.
and keep Dad sober, we do other things as well. So,
Okay. Fair enough.
yeah,
Fair enough.
there has to be some fun in there too. But I
Absolutely.
agree.
Absolutely. So let's roll to start in this case all the news for this week. So welcome back. Let's jump to the first update. And the first update is the general available of Azure Policy support for Azure Site Recovery. And we could not start this on a better way, right? With two of our constantly and daily conversations that we have with our customers. One of them is
God.
Azure Policy, and the other one is Azure Site Recovery.
Exactly. Yeah, we are frequently talking about Azure Policy, and maybe to kind of close the loop, when I first saw this, I started thinking about, oh, well, now it's working with Site Recovery. So, if Policy is supporting Azure Site Recovery, what else is it doing? What else should I be exploring? So I started kind of going down this road of Azure Bicep to create Azure Policy. And then, of course, this we're into infrastructure as code, or policy as code in this case, pretty quickly there. So what's really fascinating to me is when we start going down that road for Azure Policy, it puts quite a twist on what I thought I knew about Azure Policy. So yes, I guess maybe just a little bit of reading to do around that for some of our viewers and listeners. So if you're interested in that, follow a really cool cat on Twitter, Gregor Suddy. He has some really cool development tips and stuff like that. So I'll just give a bit of a shout out there. Totally my cheat sheet guy.
But what about this update? What is your the part that you like it about this update?
So in this case, we always talk anytime there's Azure Policy updates kind of in our list, we get to talk about automation. And Azure Policy is kind of that, I don't know, like the forgotten kid a little bit when it comes to automation. It's the original automation when we think about Azure. So we set the policy, and now it's no VM left behind. We can automatically say if it's a VM if it's NV12, I'm just picking on the bad boy, and we need to have this highly available, highly recoverable, meet our RTO, RPO stuff, then we can build that into an Azure policy now, and it can automatically provision that VM into Azure Site Recovery for us. That is freaking cool, because now we'll never not have whatever our business case, business requirements are. It'll never be overlooked, so that we don't have any kind of gaps in the infrastructure and the coverage and the ASR that we're using, site recovery. Sorry. That way, when somebody creates a new VM, it's automatically going to be enrolled. Everything's going to just kind of automatically happen in that way, right?
Absolutely. The part that I like I like about this is the part that with the policy, right? You have the part of the compliance, okay, and you have you are the part of the compliance, and you are using this to make sure that first you know what it is that you have on your environment regarding DR, okay, and you have all of those components regarding what is the organizational standards. But besides that, okay, what I love about this is because this is Azure policy, okay, yeah, and using exactly what you meant by the part of the automation is now you can leverage, for example, tags to make sure that even that machine or not, even if it's with DR enabled, with Azure Site Recovery enabled or not, with a simple tag and by running the policy and all of that, you can automatically put that as a DR if that is the case. So it's because you can, if you're looking at this on another perspective, is, and this has always been one of the topics that it's like how to create a VM on Azure is changing dramatically, because right now you can do so much without going without that wizard. Even creating VNets, even creating backups, even creating disaster recovery, even creating all the infrastructure around them like load balancing and everything else, you can do it within the wizard, which is pretty powerful and says a lot of those type of things that you can do it. But I see a lot of people, because of that, right? I see a lot of people doing shortcuts, right? And
yes, that's very true.
And that's where all of these policies and all of these governance, right, it comes to play, and it's our daily conversation with customers. Because again, now that is in GA, now it's usable in production, we can literally do this. And the part that I like about this is to be able to set up Azure Site Recovery, right? You need a certain level of permissions, right? And look where I'm going this, okay? And you need a certain level of permissions. By applying the policy and by having the compliance report, you can, when you configure the policy, you can put on the remediation tasks those permissions, okay? And the person that is looking at this, or the team that is looking at the governance of the environment, through the remediation task, they can make sure that that VM, it should have disaster recovery enabled, it should have the replication enabled, and by creating or just performing the remediation task, what they are doing is they are configuring that automatically. So the powerful of this policy, it goes behind just automation. It goes behind of making sure that your environment is within the standards, within the compliance that your organization needs to have, like SOX, CIS, and so on and so forth,
absolutely.
right? By giving the power to those teams to analyze and to make sure that this is a service that should be enabled, and because of someone decided to cut some corners, right? Or by a missing part of this enable, you can now make it that available, right? And that's the part that I love about this. And I think I've been talking too much just regarding one update, but it happens, right?
Not at all. I think that you touched on the really good point, and I really liked what you had to say around tags and enabling or really empowering different teams in the organization to be able to drive what they have for business requirements through disaster recovery or business continuity requirements, things like that, right? So we can configure those policies to do so much more than just auto enroll all of the
Absolutely.
VMs.
Exactly.
We can configure things in a really cool way. I love how you said that. It's exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving to the next one. Next one is again talking about backup and disaster recovery and the part of protecting your workloads. It's the Azure Backup on Automation Updates 2021. So this is a kind of resume of the entire year that the automation that they did for Azure Backup, and this is a very nice available blog post, right? Because it kind of gives us the top 5 during the Azure Backup for automation, and that happens on 2021. And of course, that a lot of automation. When talking about automation, you're talking about scripting, talking about scripting language. So CLI commands, PowerShell, and all of that, they are the top 2 in this case. But it's not only that, right? It's the power of going behind. That's the part that I do love about Microsoft, is the power of those tools. It's like is going to be for us normal. If they don't update those CLI commands and the PowerShell, is going to be a shock for us, right? But the part of going further and moving this, no, I apologize, and moving this to Terraform is a part that I do love it, because it's a third party tool, right?
Mhm.
That
Yep.
is really powerful, and it can do way more than that. And the benefit of using this with Bicep, like you mentioned on the previous one, it's tremendous, right?
It is, yeah. And I think, a lot of organizations have been starting or exploring and testing Terraform. And one of the things that I always say is, if you're in for the penny, you're in for the pound. So once you start using languages to deploy, so if you're using Terraform, chances are you're also going to be using something like Bicep or PowerShell. You're going to be looking at desired state config. You're going to be looking at Ansible or Chef. There's all these tools that are available, and there's a little bit of crossover for some of them, but there's also different things that each one does, and it's quite often very complementary, right? So, you talk about CLI. CLI is a very versatile tool for us now in the Azure portal. And not just on the Azure portal, I shouldn't say that, right? So we can execute CLI commands remotely against a tenant as well. But yeah, so all those automation updates, if you're going to touch one language, chances are you're going to touch 2 or 3 at the same time.
Absolutely. And it's awesome to see the evolution during the last year of Azure Backup for doing that, because it's again, it goes to the same topic that we talk about it on the previous update, regarding the part of automation, regarding the part of going there and through the cycle of creating a VM, for example, you enable. But Azure Backup is not only for VMs. You can apply for almost everything. and be able to
Yeah.
automate that in everything that you have on Azure, it's pretty powerful, right? And
It's extremely powerful and
the part
easy to
that, and
use.
it's easier to do it through the updates, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah. I think Azure Backup is an underrated tool sometimes.
Yeah.
We often look for something that's more complex in our solutions in IT in general. I'm very much generalizing here. And, you and I have talked about this many, many times. We'll talk about it a lot more in the future, I'm sure. But finding the simple solution, something that is easy to maintain, easy to fix, and is sustainable for an organization, that's the really tough one, right? That's the
Yes.
harder solution, I think, many
Absolutely.
times to find.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree more. The next one that we have is the Azure Ultra Disk Storage is now GA in West US 3. So this is the most recent region, okay, that we have in US. If I'm not
Yeah.
believing in West area. So this is in Arizona, and now they have the most expensive disk and the most fastest disks ever in Azure.
Yeah, they are super fast, and they're usually deployed for high demand workloads, right?
Yes.
So we often pick on SAP HANA certification, mainly because it's a very difficult certification to attain.
Absolutely.
And Ultra disks are really intended to cater to like SAP and other large softwares that have those big databases that we
Yeah.
have to interact with, right?
It's
So
very
this is
transaction heavy
really cool.
workloads that you should
Exactly.
use
Yeah.
this. Yes, absolutely. Although I did another day. I have to tell you that I did a demo of this of performance, and man, when you want to push this when some IOPS, it's getting pretty crazy. So I got like, it was insane. It was like 3,000 megabytes per second as a max throughput, or 4,000. It was insanely. Even compare, it was like, usually I always recommend, depending on what it is, that is like the premium SSDs are more than enough. Okay.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and
Right.
usually I'm going to my clients because I'm kind of a cheap guy, and you say, yeah, you should use standard SSD because you will not see the difference. So standard SSD, usually you have a true output, if I'm not mistaken, of about 750 megs per second,
Mhm.
which is pretty
That sounds
awesome.
right.
Okay,
It's pretty good,
it's
but
pretty good.
premium.
Premium, it's a little bit above that. It's just like, it's less than 1 gigabyte, so we don't
Mhm.
have too much. But the ultra disks, it's like 4,000 megabytes per second. So it's like, even
It's
before you
really
think
crazy. Yeah.
reading, he's already writing.
Yeah. So again, we've finally reached the point in computing where the computer's faster than we are again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the part that I was like, whoa, because that's the beauty of our job. Is the cool part is to play with all of these cool things, right? I
Oh
remember
yeah.
when I was deploying SAP on Azure, that I was able to play with those big M family machines, right?
Mm.
And like deploying 256 CPUs with half terabyte of RAM. It's not every single day that you do that, right? And I even tweet that time. I even say, yeah, I built a server to play Tetris. Yeah, imagine 256. And I remember there is now, I have to find it. There is a program that I think it was Mark Rusinovich that he kind of built it, that you put on those big machines, right? Those you run it, and it triggers the different CPUs, and it can
Mhm.
build the symbol of Azure, the old one, symbol of Azure on the CPU. That was pretty cool.
I've seen a video of this.
You
one.
seen the video of that, right?
Yeah,
That
I know the demo you're talking about. Yes, it is really cool to see that.
that is geekness on a high level.
Isn't it? Yeah, he
Playing
blows
with Process Explorer, right? To just attach that to the to the CPU, to just have the Azure symbol on the Process Explorer resource viewer or whatever was it. It's behind of, and it's too much time, I have to say, available. We don't have that. We don't have that.
Not today. I have
today.
some cold cervezas.
Okay, fair enough. So let's keep going. The next one is the general availability of Load Balancer SKU upgrade through PowerShell script. Again, PowerShell
Absolutely
coming to this. So now, what I like about this is, yes, you can do this on Azure Load Balancer, right? And you can upgrade from the standard to the basic to the standard.
Basic to standard.
Yes.
Yeah. I know it doesn't always make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. Whatever. From the basic to standard on a portal. That was awesome. But this, it changed a little bit the way that what I like about this update, it changed a little bit on the automation side of it. Because now you can, for example, looking at associated this with Azure monitoring and application insights and all of that, you can create a PowerShell script that basically for that time you can upgrade from basic to standard if you need to. Okay, and that is the cool thing about the upgrading. It's running that PowerShell script, running that command, and bang, you are done. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you gave the perfect use case that I actually had in my mind was, now that this can be scripted, you have it available. It's going to be sitting in Azure Monitor. You're going to be taking a look at that basic SKU for your load balancer. Yeah. And if it meets a certain threshold criteria, and only your business will know what's the right threshold for you. If it's,
Exactly.
95% capacity for X number of hours, then upgrade to the next level up kind of thing. And then, we can now do that kind of in that automated way. And I think that's fantastic. So this also means that we can schedule upgrades. Yeah. Because quite often when we do the upgrade, they say zero downtime. Zero downtime doesn't always take into account the current sessions. So sometimes there's a bit of a hiccup. So maybe we need to do it at 3:45 a.m. Instead of 2 in the afternoon, right? We discover this at 2 in the afternoon. Boom, Azure function. I think, to me, that just says the easiest way to do it. Time it, trigger it at 3:45 in the morning, get up early, check on it, make sure everything is working well, have your monitoring team keep a close eye on it after the upgrade, and you should be good to go.
Absolutely.
It's pretty cool.
Although this GA, you have some caveats, okay? So these have some caveats or some, let's call it, limitations, okay? One of the first one, this is, as you see on the title, this is just for upgrade, okay? First of all, so you cannot going back and forth. And the reason why behind this, I think it's worth mention here, is basically what the PowerShell script is doing is creating a brand new load balancer with the standard SKU and copy the configurations and moving, okay, the backend resources to the new one, okay? So by doing that, you are upgrading the SKU, you are getting more powerful, but you have exactly the same configuration for doing this. So if you want to do this, just be careful on those rules. Just be careful on those, because it's just one way. If you want to go back to basic, you have to just remember that you need to take down this standard SKU and go back to basic once again. Okay, that is the first limitation. The other one, the upgrades of the public IP from the basic to standard needs to be in place. So you need to go, okay, and having, or before you doing this, to be able to upgrade your IP SKU from basic to standard. Okay, that is the other one. Then, so the allocation of the allocation of the IP needs to be static. So you cannot use dynamic updates or dynamic IPs. So you need to have, because remember, this upgrade, what it does, it's basically creates a brand new load balancer. So by creating a new brand load balancer, if you have dynamic IPs, public IPs, it will create a brand new public IP, and you cannot attach exactly the same new one to that. And if your load balancer doesn't have the front IP configuration or a backend pool, it will give you an error. Okay, running the script. So you cannot have empty. So you cannot have, because I see a lot of those that you have empty load balancers there, that you are just with the configuration and you basically move, in this case for testing or whatever it is, some of those backend resources. In this case, you need to have this enabled. That's the only caveats that I wanted to mention over here, because I think it's important, because this is in GA and everyone should use this in production now. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's safe for production. But those caveats really are a good thing to talk about. Thank you for raising those, because it's kind of like the sales line, right? So the sales line is, hey, you can upgrade this using command line now, or PowerShell rather. But they don't always tell you in that kind of that sales tag about what some of those rules are, or those qualifying steps that we have to do as prerequisites. Yeah. So that's really good. And it is the backend pool config and the front end configuration and the standard SKU for public IP, that is really important to make sure that those ones are in place. The static standard SKU for public IP is, in my mind, definitely a big prerequisite, because a lot of organizations want to limit the number of public IPs that are assigned, and rightly so. It's a great way to help control costs and kind of ways of data ingress. So make sure that you're working with your networking team when you're taking a look at doing those upgrades, or even testing them out and find out what's needed.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. The next one, I will give you the honors to just.
Okay, I'll try this one. So general availability for multiple custom BGP APIPA addresses for active VPN gateways. So starting now, all SKUs of active VPN gateways now support multiple custom BGP APIPA addresses in each instance. So the APIPA is the non-routable IP, and I remember this because we were talking about this when we went through for the list of topics today. So APIPA is the non-routable address, and my first question when I, in my tired head when I read this was, oh my gosh, APIPA and BGP, what? Why are we talking about routing with non-routable IP addresses?
Yeah, exactly.
So the APIPA addresses are used for the BGP allocations, right? So for the BGP resources, I guess we could kind of say it that way. And now we can assign multiple custom BGP ranges. And this is really good, because a BGP picks up anything in the route table and kind of, let's say, merges them together on the network, right? Yes. And allows the best routes to be found kind of naturally. It's not really naturally, but it happens in the background. So for most of us, it just works, right?
Yeah.
Now, where we have kind of this APIPA usage is where we have network appliances and things like that. So we might have firewalls, filters, different network equipment that are part of the BGP infrastructure that you need to have a non-routable IP assigned so that they can communicate kind of in parallel management interfaces, things like that, right?
Yes.
So I think this one is actually really cool. And something at the bottom of this update, they kind of have hidden away in here. Maybe you want to talk about this one.
Yeah. So this mainly, what I like about this is like you mentioned, this is only for the active Azure VPN gateways, and basically, this feature enables the BGP connections, for example, to AWS or even other cloud providers. So you might have, for example, different tunnels, and that communication within those right tunnels, they you don't need to set up usually a network, right? You can let them communicate to each other by a APIPA, because a APIPA it's the automatic private IP address. So when you are not configuring either to DHCP or manually, right, the IP on the same network, automatically gives something on the range of 169.254, right? That is the characteristic of the APIPA IP range. So now, what in this case you can have is you can have multiple custom BGP APIPA. So meaning that even if you are going, if you have multi-cloud, like for example Azure and AWS, now you can set up this way more simple, because on active connection, you can have, for example, a AWS connection, connection one and connection two, and both of them, they will know which connection it is, because it will know what is the connection or what is the communication between two, because a PIPA usually is kind of one-to-one peer, right? You don't have too much. So
Exactly.
and then you have like one connection from the VPN gateway to one, for example, tunnel on one region, for example, and then you have a second tunnel that you have another connection. And because you have the active, now the BGP knows which connection to use automatically for this. And that's where it's going to be very, very helpful, because now it's going to be easier, and it's going to be, it supports multiple. So on the blog post that I highly recommend you to read, right, or you that you are listening to go visit and to read, you can see that you can enable multiple connections between, for example, Azure and AWS, and it's pretty cool how easy is to do that. I did test it. Okay, I have to say, I did test it, and you can do it that by different instances, and it's pretty cool to just doing that. It's so simple to do that, and you just enable, and you just create, and that's it. You can even configure your own APIPA, in this case, inside of that, which is pretty awesome. And that's where
Yep.
you are able to do that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I don't remember seeing configurable APIPA before.
Yes.
Certainly not in Azure, but I mean, I might be wrong. I'm no networking expert by any stretch.
Yeah.
But I have to agree. Building, defining, and provisioning site-to-site peerings is so easy to do now, and the Microsoft docs are really great. So if you're creating site-to-sites, or you want to test it in your test subscription, of course, not in production. This is also public preview, so we would never do this in production. I know you wouldn't, right? So we've said it so many times, but yet we still see it happen. Drives me crazy. But we can provision that out, and you can use your test subscription and go. That's what it's for. Test it out, have fun, and have a good time with that. And I think I need to rewind for a moment. This one is generally available my browser tab did advance for me with my magic scroll button on my laptop. So this feature is general availability. And I apologize for the confusion on
That's
that one.
okay. No worries, no worries. If you did that, now you have the responsibility of doing the next one.
I thought I might have bit that one off there too. So, yes, next up, of course, public preview, Azure Static Web Apps Enterprise Grade Edge. This one's pretty cool, I have to say.
Man,
so, right?
Yeah, this one, it's unbelievable. So I want to step back to starting talking about this update to just talking about this. What is this enterprise grade edge? Okay, because as you know, or everyone knows, right? Azure have 60 plus regions, right? But besides that, they have what's called the edge locations, that they are nothing more than basically what they call the enterprise grade edge is basically other regions that they have with partners, okay, that they have some Azure services, okay, that basically goes across the major cities, and they have what's called the edge point of of Azure. So usually the point of entry on Azure, those are the edge locations that we're talking about. So what does that mean? Is that now on Azure Static Web Apps, so Azure Static Web Apps is nothing more than sites, basically, statically. Now you can increase the performance of those and be able, this is a public preview, still public preview, so not in production, but you will be able to proactively make that available through the Azure front door and Azure CDN. So Azure front door what will do is it will look where you're coming from and it will point you to the closest one, okay? And CDN with the content delivery network to be able to place your site on those regions, on those edge. So, like I said, we have 61 regions, 60 plus regions, right? That they are maintained by Microsoft. But with this, we are advancing to 118 plus regions. So doubling, okay, more than double, almost doubling, right? The locations around the world that your site can be deployed to. So now imagine the low latency of those incredible. So I will do this for my blog because it's really important for everyone that's reading my blog to like, again, like the Ultra Disks before even typing the address of the AzureCenter.com on the URL, they already loaded the page. Imagine that, because it's insanely fast.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that is worth mentioning here as well is not only do you get the full benefit with enterprise grade edge of those 118 plus regions or edge locations in this case, but you also get distributed denial of service protection.
Yes.
So you get the DDoS attack protection rolled into this service as part of it.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's amazing.
And I think the other part that is really cool for websites, and we know increasingly important, so there's been a crunch for a long time, but it's kind of critical mass now, right, with IP addresses in the IPv4 space. So this service for Azure Static Web Apps Enterprise Grade Edge also has native support for end-to-end IPv6 and HTTP2 protocol. So this is pretty good stuff.
Oh my, yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So they always sneak these like small ones in, and it's like, oh, there's just like 3 bullet points on the page here. Just, it's a quickie.
No, it is.
This is a big one. Yeah. This is a big one.
And even with CDN, because this is a static web app, right? So this is for static sites. In this case, the caching mechanism of this, and the way that you update these and all of that is insanely, because now you can have your page or your site or your web app, right, across the world, that with cache that, yeah, if they the denial of service, it's attached to, it's one of the things that is the native service that you have on the edge, because again, it's the edge of Azure, so they want to make sure that you are secure on that and be able to
Exactly.
have that. And because of proliferation of all of those locations, you're starting to have constraints regarding your IPv4, right? By enable this natively on IPv6, it's tremendous, because in the backend with Azure Front Door, right, you are just pointing at it, and it's transparently for your client to go there. It just looks at the site and it bang, it's there, and it's fast, and
Exactly. Yep.
it
And
does all of that.
with the IPv6 and HTTP2,
Yes,
it's really set up for success for the future, right?
yes,
So that's much increased security, routing, address space availability. It's going to be a lot easier to maintain and do those incremental updates that Azure is famous for, which is, of course, why we're here.
absolutely. And besides that, they went even more, and they just optimized the file compression of those files, so it doesn't take too much of space as well. Because remember, we pay for everything, right? We pay for the
Exactly.
CDN, we pay for the cache, and we pay for everything. So by optimizing that file compression, this is going to be even cheaper to run it,
Yep.
even with
I,
the
I
fastest one.
I'm thinking of some very interesting ways to use this, to be honest, and because it's in public preview now, I can go in and poke at it as well. I may have some time next week to have a look at that.
While you are drinking cervezas to the pool, you just have your laptop. Say, let me implement this close to here.
Okay, how cool is cloud computing under the clouds? Come on.
No, but as I can see on your screen, you don't have any cloud.
This was a particularly clear day.
Okay.
Very, very lucky and very grateful for my opportunity to enjoy some palm trees blowing in the breeze here.
Okay, that's okay. Let's move to the other one before I get depressed.
So you have to take this one, but we did save the best for last.
Exactly. So, announcing price reductions for Azure Confidential Computing. So this is pretty cool. We've been talking on these podcasts, right? On this series and on this show about saving money and about confidential computing. And because of that, now Microsoft's announcing that they are reducing by 1/3, so by 33%, the DCSV2 and the DCSV3 series. So meaning that starting in the 1st of January, beginning of the year, they will starting using already that, the price reduction. So you will see
And
on your bill a reduction of those series or those families by 33%.
exactly. And I think we both know, definitely as a fact, many organizations have these two series deployed heavily in their organizations.
Yes.
This is one of my go-tos, kind of the workhorse VMs, and to see these have such a great cost reduction in the confidential computing kind of vertical offering, I think that this is amazing. Now, when we think about confidential computing, it is well, let's say it has been typically a bit more expensive, because there's some certain measures that
Yes.
Azure is making sure are in place, attestation and physical security, but also firmware security, virtualizing everything, and many layers, right?
Yes.
And it allows an organization or a user to use that server and know that everything on it is right on that one. It's confidential.
Yes.
right? So you can use it for healthcare and things like that.
Yeah,
There's lots of different things, right?
it's just another way that we should see this as a data protection, because we are not
Exactly.
saying that the normal VMs, they are not protected, or they
No,
are
this is
not
an
secure.
additional layer.
Okay,
It's an additional layer.
this is for those VMs, or for those confidential computing that you need an extra layer that is required for your data protection, right?
Exactly. It's typically seen in healthcare, finance,
Yes,
or even in government sometimes, right? So
and it's not
depending
even
on
for those verticals, right? It's not for every single workload. Okay,
exactly,
so
this is for
it's not
specific
like,
requirement.
exactly, it's not like you are healthcare or financing or government, that all of your workloads need to be under confidential computing. No, come on.
Gosh, no.
No,
That's
let's be reasonable, and let's talk about that. It's like, if you really need this, okay, it's going to be that available and cheaper. I would love to
exactly.
see, to be very honest, um, everyone moving, because I think it's going to be impractical, and sometimes it's not used for that. But the tendency of a lot of organizations that I see, it's, oh, if it's available, let's use it. But then they complain about the price, and it's like, you don't buy a Ferrari to deliver pieces,
This is
right?
true.
It's like, yes, you can, but then you need to deliver a lot of pieces, right, to pay for the Ferrari, at least for that. On only if you want to just have fun delivering pieces, and I don't know what is going to be the end goal of having like a kind of a mixed
So
pizza.
are you telling me I can't actually get a pizza in 30 minutes again then if they use the Ferrari?
No, even less than that. But then it's going to be down south, because if during the winter they are deliver pizzas
Oh, you
on
can't drive
Canada
those anywhere.
with Ferrari, that I want to have that job.
And I'm going to say you can't go too far south because the roads in Mexico, maybe not made for Ferraris.
Okay. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. But yeah, it's exactly the same thing, right? So it's good to have that. It's good news, and it's a very, like you said, a well way to just ending our podcast. And with that, we're coming to, sadly, to our end of this episode. I don't even know which episode number is. I lost my count. It should be like 40 something, close to
I
50.
don't know
Yeah.
anymore.
But yeah, that doesn't matter. So I want to thank you, Andrew, for taking time from your busy times of drinking cervezas by the pool to come and having this conversation with me. And for all of you listening, don't forget to uh, giving your thumbs up, or not, or giving your feedback. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we will have
Absolutely.
pretty good things coming up on this year. So
And we highly recommend that if you subscribe, also just share, tell one or two of your friends that you might have that are interested in maybe technology and Azure specifically, of course. But we offer a full 100% money back guarantee.
guarantee,
Guaranteed.
guaranteed. That is always been our team, or
Absolutely.
our mojo in this case, since the beginning.
Absolutely. Listener and watcher satisfaction is number one, and we offer a full refund,
Full refund.
of everything you paid to subscribe.
Exactly. Or if you want to pay as a beer, just find us. Right now,
Yeah, absolutely.
we cover almost North America. And yeah, with that, Mexico is North America, right?
Absolutely, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
So yeah, we cover all North America. So if you are down south, you can pay beer to una cerveza, for for our friend Andrew. Or if you want to pay a cold beer for me, no worries. We are always available
Absolutely.
here.
We're here to help.
Absolutely. So once again, thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much for everything. Happy New Year to everyone. And thank you for watching. And I hope that I can see you on the next one. Bye for now.